Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation tonight. My name is Alberto Vogt. I'm a regional sales manager for Immunotech in the United States, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. And wow, what a night we have in store for you. We have a very special presentation by a very special friend of mine. I've been with Immunotech for 8 years already, and since then, I started getting to know Dr. Gutman, and wow, what an experience and what a gentleman. So, Dr. Gutman, it's a pleasure to be on this call with you. And before I give you the microphone, I just want to say that Dr. Gutman is the world's leading author on glutathione. He is a former professor of Montreal's McGill University Medical School, where his specialty was emergency medicine. He has been an organizer and speaker at a numerous national and international medical conferences and contributed to train of thousands of doctors and students. And also, he has written the most books on the topic of glutathione. So tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce to all of you Dr. Jimmy Gutman, Chief Science Officer for Immunotech. Hello, Dr. Gutman.
Hi, Alberto. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And honestly, it's a pleasure working with you. I've always really enjoyed your company and your friendship and your professionalism. And thank you for inviting me. And I know that Raphael is the person that initiated this, and he's doing great. So I want to thank Raphael as well for bringing me on.
Excellent. So, Doctor, the time is yours. So, take it away, my friend.
All right, I'm gonna just try to share my screen here. Sorry about that. So again, thank you for the introduction. I know that when we started this call off, we were talking about where to get more information, and the people were mentioning some of the videos and the Facebook page where they're getting glutathione research. You see in front of you some addresses there. The YouTube page is being filled with more and more good stuff for you to learn about glutathione, for you to learn about Immunocal, and of course the Facebook page, as you see, for anybody who's interested in the newest in glutathione research. This is what I obsessively do all the time, is try to find the most exciting research on glutathione and regularly post it. So today we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson. Everybody wants to know, how did this all start? Where did you guys come from? More importantly, where we're at today and what we see in the future. So let's take a look. One of the things that really attracts a lot of people who are interested in biology and health, doctors, scientists, the most important thing for these people, and we spoke about it again just about 5 minutes ago, is the fact that there are studies, published studies on Immunocal. Now look at this number. This number keeps on growing more and more. This slideshow, when I showed this not that long ago, there were 63 total studies. Get this, as of yesterday, there are no longer 63 studies. There are 85 published articles in the medical literature in the best journals in the world on Immunocal. I challenge anybody to try to find a natural product anywhere else that has this kind of scientific background. And that's why so many people are joining, including droves of doctors and researchers. And because the level of sophistication and intelligence and awareness and need by the general public is such that we don't buy into stories and testimonies and anecdotes and marketing. We want to know that the real science is there, and that's what we offer. So we've got research studies, we've got patents, we've got ongoing clinical work. How did this all start? This all started with this individual you see here, a very good-looking, well-groomed man called Dr. Gustavo Bunos. I have to admit to you that this took a lot of work to get this picture, because normally Dr. Bunos, for the people that remember him, had his hair all over the place. His office was a complete mess. And I guess if you're a genius, you're allowed doing that. He originally was a surgeon who was trained in Italy. And after the war, he decided to come to North America, like so many people do, to find fame and fortune. And unfortunately, given the we're a little snotty about medical degrees here in Canada and the United States. We weren't able to give him a medical license because he was a foreign graduate, and because he was so brilliant, he decided what he'd do is go on and do studies. And having been a surgeon, he raised an interesting question. Why was it that if you take the same patient, one of them the same age, same medical diagnosis, same pathology. One of them has surgery and is home in a week, and the other person who the demographics and statistics look exactly the same as the other guy ends up in the intensive care unit for 3 months. Like what are some differences that would cause such a spectacular different outcome? And he answered his question in his mind. He had this theory that probably a bright kid could have, but nobody had questioned this before. Maybe it had something to do with what the person was eating. Maybe it had something to do with their diet. Perhaps there were certain foods that would improve clinical outcome, recovery from surgery, bolster the immune system, and just was very important, because there were a lot of things we didn't know back in the 1960s and 1970s. So he started looking at different proteins, thinking that it's got to be a protein that is at work here. Most enzymes are proteins. Much of the immune system is based on proteins. Healing is certainly based on proteins. So he started collecting all kinds of proteins and wanted to see what they did to the immune system. Now, being a surgeon, he didn't know much about the immune system. So he hired and got together with this extremely bright graduate student from McGill University at the time. This is a young Patricia Kongshaven. And Dr. Kongshaven at the time was a star at McGill because, as it turns out, she was the biggest, most important female pioneer in the study of immunology. I call her the great-grandmother of immunology. Now, why would I say that? Patricia wrote the first chapter in the first book on immunology that was disseminated widely amongst doctors. So she was like right there at the outset. And in fact, it took a few more years before immunology was even recognized as a specialty. And so she was a big player in that. And so they started collecting these proteins, animal proteins and plant proteins and whey and algae, you name it, and started feeding it to animals to see if it could stimulate a stronger immune response. And they got some interesting results, but nothing really spectacular. One day, this box appears on Dr. Bunos's desk, and the box is from Europe, and there's a note attached to it, and it says, "Dear Dr. Bunos, this is a byproduct of one of our industries. To date, we've been dumping it into the fields, we've been dumping it into the river, and the government is giving us grief because what it's causing is an overgrowth of life in the river and an overgrowth in the fields." Well, very interesting. And it also had a $10,000 check, and it said, "Can you see if there's any practical use for this protein?" So Dr. Bunos is playing with this white powder back in the 1970s. We were always suspicious about white powder arriving in the mail, but it was convincing enough story for him to say, I'm going to put it into my experiments. And lo and behold, with this white protein powder, a number of years later, we discovered that these animals were living. These animals were living anywhere between 30 and 50% longer. And we did this many, many years ago. We did this probably 30, 35, 40 years ago. And I'm still seeing people that are coming to me with products saying, oh, look, Jeremy, here's the product, and mice are living 15% longer. Please, we did this 30, 40 years ago. And although it's interesting in mice here, it's very, very difficult to try to fund a study on humans. And imagine trying to get 80 years of funding. But this was really spectacular and drew a lot of attention. So we looked at this white protein powder, which happened to be a type of whey protein. And here is an older picture of the clinical team at the Montreal General Hospital who did the original research. Now, if you look at them, if you were in medicine, you would recognize some of the names here. Of course, there's Dr. Bunos. Here's Dr. Mulder, who happens to be the chief doctor of the Montreal Canadiens, and a lot of other pretty famous people. They're young here. Notice that they're all smiling, except for this guy here in the bottom right. They were all taking the Immunocal. He didn't like the taste. So, but when they saw how the experiments were going, they decided they were going to take it themselves, and they benefited. So what we know is that this whey protein specially prepared isolate ended up raising glutathione. It took us a few years to figure that out. So what is glutathione? This is a key word for you to know. It's a substance that already exists in each and every cell of your body. Your body makes glutathione. Your body has glutathione. The question is, how quickly do you lose glutathione? Under what circumstances do your glutathione levels drop? And why it's important to keep your glutathione up. So the main slide here, if you can remember one slide this whole evening, it's this one here. You can't eat glutathione and expect it to raise your body's glutathione levels. When you eat glutathione, it gets broken down in your digestive tract, and very little of it makes it to your cells. The way to raise glutathione levels in your body is to feed your cells the building blocks, the essential nutrients, so your cells make their own glutathione. You need to use these building blocks we call precursors. So this is the most important thing for you to know, because you're still going to see a lot of people with oral glutathione pills and powders and liposomal glutathione and this glutathione and that glutathione. You can't be eating glutathione. You need to take the building blocks for your body to make glutathione. And this has been proven again and again and again and again. There's actually over 160,000 medical articles available for you to read on glutathione. 160,000. Let me put that into context. Vitamin C and vitamin E, when you combine the amount of studies in those two together, and everybody's heard of vitamin C and vitamin E, you look at all the studies done on those two vitamins, they aren't even half of what you can find on glutathione. So this is an explosion of research, and in a few years, glutathione will be as common a word as vitamin E or cholesterol, words that were obscure to us years ago. So while we're on the topic of glutathione, what does glutathione do? Well, the way to remember the most important things, the most important functions of glutathione is to remember the word idea. Glutathione, what a great idea. What does idea stand for? I stands for the immune system. D stands for detoxification. E stands for energy. And A stands for antioxidant. Let's look at these in turn. The I for the immune system. Think of glutathione literally as food for your immune system. If your glutathione levels are low, you are going to be, by definition, immunocompromised. If your glutathione levels are high, well, then you have the opportunity to optimize your immune system. D stands for detoxification. And there are so many things, from cigarette smoke to automobile exhausts to heavy metals to pesticides to herbicides, that absolutely depend on glutathione for their elimination. I tell people that next to water, there's no more important detoxification substance than glutathione. E stands for energy. We could spend a whole day talking about it, but just a very easy explanation is that our cells have these little generators in them that produce power, a little structure called the mitochondria. Without glutathione, these little mitochondria would literally burn up, and we would lose our energy. So by the constant feeding of the mitochondria of glutathione is what maintains our cellular energy. And we could soon we're going to be talking a lot about Immunocal and glutathione and sports, and just a reflection of increased energy. Finally, A, and this is the role that most people recognize, and that is glutathione is called the master antioxidant. Now, why would you use a term like that? It sounds more like a marketing term than a scientific term. Scientists use the term master antioxidant because, get this, none of the other known antioxidants, and there are thousands of them, not just vitamin C and vitamin E, there are thousands of antioxidants. None of them can work properly without the presence of glutathione, which means that yes, vitamin C and vitamin E and your fruits and your vegetables and your supplements are going to work better in light of a high glutathione level. So you're going to get more miles out of your food by raising your glutathione level. So just to remember, I, immune system, D, detoxification, E, energy, A, antioxidant, and 90% of the important roles of glutathione. So we took all of this information and we had produced some rather important papers on Immunocal glutathione in the laboratory and on in animal studies. These are all really, really interesting and important, but what really counts in medicine are human trials. Back in the 1980s, when you were given a diagnosis of AIDS or HIV, back in the 1980s, this was pretty much a kiss of death. We really didn't know how to treat it. We didn't have very good antivirals. They were quite toxic. And many, many patients were dying. And most were going to die if they were HIV positive. So we looked at other people's literature that discovered that AIDS patients, by definition, were glutathione deficient. So what do? Try to replenish glutathione levels in AIDS patients and see what happens. But this requires a human study. And people think, oh, just, go do a human study. No, this is immensely complicated. You need to get through review boards, and you need to apply to the government, and there are a lot of hoops to jump through. You need to go to boards of ethics, and they look at what you're going to do with humans and see if you get permission. So we applied to do a study, and I'm going to tell you something that may be a little disturbing. Their perspective was these AIDS patients, they're going to die anyways. So go ahead and play with your little white protein powder. Okay. And we jumped on that opportunity. And the results we had were just outstanding. Lowering viral count, increasing muscle mass, improving what's called a CD4 lymphocyte count for you keeners. So we published our first human study with this on HIV positive patients. And the studies that we did were so important that we ended up getting additional funding from the Canadian government through the what's called the HIV Trials Network, work at McGill, more work at McGill, attention from world leaders in AIDS, such as the Pasteur Institute. The two gentlemen that you see down there, the one on the right is Mark Weinberg, who is a colleague of mine, who was the head of the International AIDS Research Group for 3 terms running. He wrote articles on Immunocal and AIDS. And the gentleman in the blue down there in your lower left, I'm sure some of you may recognize him. This is Luc Montagnier. Dr. Montagnier received the Nobel Prize in Medicine for the discovery of the AIDS virus. And in his book that you see there, that he put this book together with different articles, there's a chapter only on Immunocal and HIV. So with his endorsement, things really took off. It put us on the international map, and from there we were able to get a lot more studies, a lot more collaboration, not just on AIDS, but on everything from cardiology to lung disease to kidney disease, and on and on and on. And this is how the articles started piling up because of that breakthrough study that we had way back when. So another thing that it allowed us to do, in Canada, we're very progressive here, more so than in the United States in this one aspect. In Canada, they set up a system whereby previously, and it still exists in the United States, you were either a drug or a food. In Canada, we set up a middle category. And in this middle category, I mean, people call it different terms, nutraceuticals and natural health products. You were allowed to make a medical claim on a natural product if you supplied Health Canada with enough research evidence. And it had to be done in humans. And we did that, and we were able to get authorized to make a claim that Immunocal is going to help your immune system. Please, the Canadians out there, I challenge you, try to find another product that has a right to say that. Try. We went on from looking at ill patients to looking at healthy patients. And who are the healthiest patients you could think of? Generally, most people will say athletes. And so we started doing work on athletes. And we had this one study, I think it was in 1999. We showed in this study where we took university athletes, put them on either a placebo or Immunocal at the beginning of the summer, had them do the same training routines all summer, and at the end of the summer measured their muscular abilities, the strength, endurance, and things like that. We demonstrated an increase in strength and endurance of between 10 and 15%. What does that mean? Well, I'll give you an example. In the Olympic Games, for most of these competitive sports, the difference between the gold medal and the poor slob coming in fifth or sixth place is often less than 1%. 10 to 15% is a crazy number when you're looking at high level sports. 10 to 15%. Almost unheard of, short of taking anabolic steroids. So when we published this study, the phone started ringing off the wall. We were getting calls from coaches, from nutritionists, from professional and amateur athletes, from teams. And now, if I were to watch the Olympic Games on TV with Alberto, we could point at the TV and go, he's on Immunocal, she's on Immunocal. Many of the Canadian Olympians, American Olympians, British team, Polish team, Kenya, and on are using this, and many professional athletes in hockey and basketball and in football are doing it, stemming from this study. So we followed up with a similar study in geriatrics, and we looked at nursing home patients, and we did the same thing. We put them either on Immunocal or a placebo, putting through a much lighter training routine, and we increased the muscle strength in these geriatric patients by 10%. What does that mean? 10% is the difference between being in bed or being in a wheelchair, between being in a wheelchair and using a walker, between using a walker and using a cane, between using a cane and playing with your grandkids in the backyard. This is what you can do. This is what you can do. And with the studies that we did, we went and we got a performance claim from Health Canada saying that taking the Immunocal is going to increase your muscular performance. Again, find me another product that can make that medical claim. I don't think you will. And more recently, we've been looking at Immunocal and the brain. I wrote the first brain-related paper back in 2008. Sorry, I had that eighth in my mind on autism. A small study, but it went on to much larger studies. We've done studies on neuroprotection, on neurodegenerative disease, on Parkinson's, on Alzheimer's, and we're just doing more and more. Head trauma, cognitive impairment, just a huge amount of research done specifically on Immunocal and the brain, and you can see some of the universities and organizations that have been involved with these studies. I mean, just top ranked people, and all that stuff forced me to put in a whole new section in my new book just on glutathione and the brain, and you could see some of the topics there, from Parkinson's to psychiatry. There's a huge amount of studies of glutathione in psychiatric disease, in sleep, in seizures, in MS, and again, I'm going to take this opportunity and try to pitch my book. It really is a major resource for anybody who's interested in seeing and understanding how glutathione affects different problems. This is just some of the topics in there: anemia, digestive diseases. I talk about female problems, I talk about male problems, and some of the research that we've just done recently. I'm going to have to probably write another book just to include it all. And these books, you can get them at glutathione.org, or you can go to Amazon. And there's something new, guys. The book is you've got to pay for a book. They're not cheap. Books these days are going up in price. So what I've done is I've arranged to have individual chapters. For example, if you want to look at glutathione in autism, or you want to look at glutathione in Alzheimer's, you can get it on Amazon Kindle. And some people get these Kindle articles for free. And if you don't have a subscription to the free Kindle, it'll probably cost you all of about $3. So take advantage of this, because there's a lot of work put into this. So I have to tell you, as a former academic physician, this is so different. When I found out about glutathione, when I started speaking with Dr. Bunos, this was so important that I gave up what I was doing 25 years ago just to be able to pursue this, because I thought it was just too damn important to pass by. And I made the right decision, because this is just phenomenal, and I welcome you all to take advantage of the technology and the science that we're putting out. And just there's going to be many people on this call that will tell you just remarkable stories about their own experiences, and their experiences sharing this with other people. So thank you for your attention, and I'll pass it back to my good friend Alberto.
Thank you, Doctor. Wonderful presentation. And for those of you that are new at Immunotech, now you know the history, and why glutathione is so important, and above all, why Immunotech continues to make a difference in so many people's lives through our products, especially Immunocal. And Doctor, you mentioned that the future is very bright for us, and we continue to invest a lot of money in research development. Can you tell us about what's new, what just recently happened with the new patents that are coming up online, and tell us a little bit about
Yes.
that.
So what the research allows you to do is also apply for patents. And so we've got patents pending in Immunocal and head trauma. We've got a patent pending for Immunocal in the treatment of autism. Last year, the end of last year, we published it. Just an amazing paper on autism by one of the top autism research centers in the United States. Just great, just great. We have another patent in for neurodegenerative disease. There's a couple papers very close to completion now. A very, very important study done on what's called MCI, mild cognitive impairment. What is mild cognitive impairment? Well, you all know what dementia is. You all know what Alzheimer's is. Mild cognitive impairment is when somebody my age starts to do things like, where are my glasses? Or losing my car keys, or putting my socks in the fridge. Nothing terrible. Can't remembering people's names. Embarrassing, but not what you would call full-blown dementia. So it's mild cognitive impairment. So get this. Wow. We now have at hand the ability to measure glutathione levels in the brain in a live person using a specially tuned MRI scanner. What? Yes. And people are starting to use this and making some really important developments. So we've taken people with mild cognitive impairment, referred to us from neurologists, and either put them on placebo and put them on Immunocal and started doing scans of the glutathione in their brain. Okay, talk about cutting edge, guys. Talk about cutting edge. Who does this? What natural product is so crazy to spend millions of dollars doing this when they can't even legally use this in marketing, we're not going to be able to say anything about this unless we reapply to the Canadian government, show them the research, and try to get an approval. But in the United States, you still can't make medical claims about natural products. But, you know, who cares? We're going to publish these papers, and we're going to let people make their own decision, and we're going to let physicians look at this. And a physician recommends a product, that's great. Just marketing, we can't talk about it. But no, this is too important. How do you ignore something like that? So that's just some of the things, Alberto. I mean, you got my blood up now, man.
No, thank you. And we have a couple questions from the
Yes,
audience.
sure.
One of them says, I have a question. How long can a healing crisis last in a diabetic person who has already been taking Immunocal for more than a month, and after consumption, glucose began to rise?
Well, there's not a set figure that I can give because everybody starts off with their own genetics. Their disease severity is different in each individual. They've had the diabetes, some people for 2 years and some people for 40 years. So it really depends on the degree of damage that's already done. I would need to know more about what they mean by healing crisis, and explain that to me. I'll just say that in general terms, what happens with it's usually a rather ill person or a rather toxic person. If they start off with too much Immunocal, they can go into something like detoxification, and that will exacerbate certain symptoms. Could change your bowel habits. It can give you headaches. It can make you fatigue. Usually, what I recommend there is to cut down on the amount of Immunocal, so that the adaptation of the body, it's easier to tolerate. I'll give you an example of a fantastic detoxification reaction that I saw when visiting a rural community in America. Now, I'm going to make fun of all of you. Most North Americans think that if this much is good for you, then that much is got to be better. Okay, so that's not always the case. So I visited this urban place, small town, and a number of wives came up to me, and they said, Dr. Gutman, we put our husbands on 3 pouches of Immunocal, and what happened was they started to stink of a pesticide that they had used 5 years previously. This, for me, I say it's a good detoxification reaction because it's not like anybody got hurt other than the wife having to put up with the husband's smell. But what the husbands were doing were detoxifying this pesticide that was embedded in their body. So what we did was, cut it down to 1 and then build up slowly, and then everything was fine. But to give a precise answer how long something's going to take, I wish I could, but people are too variable.
All right. I have another question here. It says, how can Immunocal help a person with post-COVID high D-dimer test results, severely affecting their activity tolerance?
Yeah. I don't have any evidence that it'll affect D-dimers, but that is just one test that doctors do to follow COVID, particularly people with a post-COVID syndrome. And post-COVID syndrome is going to be a huge epidemic. It already is, and it's just going to grow bigger in the future. Research right now is suggesting that anywhere between 10% and 40% of people that have come down with COVID, particularly the earlier strains, are going to go on to something called long COVID or post-COVID, prolonged post-COVID. And this is a multi-system problem, neurological mostly. Many people are left in this fog, not thinking well, always extremely fatigued. But there's also vascular problems that may be linked to some of the neurological ones, but problems with the brain, problems with the heart. There's pulmonary problems. So D-dimer is just one of the tests that they're looking at in regards to mostly the vascular system. I will tell you this: I've given a number of lectures on COVID and glutathione, and I started reading a lot on COVID, post-COVID, prolonged COVID, and glutathione, and the literature's out there. And I'm working on something. Well, Albert, you get me talking, man. And I say things that I shouldn't. But I'll just tell you, I'm working on something really big on long COVID and glutathione. I'll leave it at that.
Very well. Now we have to do the disclaimer that Immunocal is
Yeah.
not destined to cure or mitigate any illnesses. It's just a supplement. And so don't take that for granted. It's all about glutathione and raising the levels of glutathione every single day. That does the job. Have another question here. It says, what may cause a 99-year-old who has been using Immunocal for almost 2 years to reject it? She was on 6 packets daily for the previous 2 months, while on Eliquis, also started to emit mucus upon starting Immunocal in 2020,
So they were on it for 2 years, and then they were fine on it, and then
and then started to reject it.
well, we have to make a big assumption that it was the Immunocal that gave the symptoms. Certainly in a 99-year-old, I would want to look closely at what else might be going on. And I can't remember a case where they stopped or they started having side effects from the Immunocal after 2 years.
Mhm.
6 pouches might be a lot of protein for a 99-year-old. That's 60 grams of protein right there. And a 99-year-old man probably doesn't need that much protein. And as we get older, our kidneys in particular are less efficient at processing protein. So a 99-year-old, I probably go with 3 pouches maximum. I don't see why he would need 6,
Right.
unless he's in the very old Olympics. I don't know. My
All right.
feeble attempt at a joke.
Okay, one more question. It says,
Yeah.
how does glutathione assist nerve growth or recovery of nerves?
Uh, Nerve injury it's one of the slowest healing types of cells in the body. But there is evidence that raising glutathione will help in nerve recovery as long as it's not a dead nerve. If it's a, if you have a major stroke where you see dead tissue, then that's not going to recover. But if you get onto a stroke much earlier on, where the tissues are still viable, then yes, absolutely, you can see recovery. And there's a lot of papers looking at glutathione and things like stroke. Also, with traumatic injury to nerves, you can see recovery. It's going to be slow, but you have to count on that nerve having at least some life left. If it's dead nerve, you won't see anything. If it still stands a chance of hope, then raising glutathione may be beneficial.
Okay. One question regarding stevia. They want to know if stevia can cause damage in the kidney with lipase.
No idea.
I have no idea.
Maybe what you can do is get Get the spelling of all this and send me an email, Alberto, and I'll be happy to look at it. I
Oh,
have no idea.
very well. And maybe the last question.
You
What
keep on
about
saying that.
what about with a nerve graft? Can glutathione help with that?
Um, just as a general statement, I think that everybody who's going to be undergoing surgery should optimize their glutathione. And again, there's a chapter on that I wrote. There's a lot of stuff written on um, uh, surgical recovery and glutathione. It's something you really got to do before you go into surgery.
Exactly. That rehabilitation is key, right?
Yes.
Perfect. And this is my question to you. Some people say that that you cannot take more than 2 pouches of Immunocal at a time, maybe because the body cannot handle more than 20 grams at a time. Is that true or not?
Yes and no. Theoretically, it would make sense to break up the Immunocal during the day. Like if you're taking 4 pouches. John Molson, he's an athlete. He takes 4 pouches a day. So theoretically, it's better to take 2 in the morning and 2 later on. We've never really tested this, but we know that if you're going to have too much of a protein load at one time, like if you're going to have a big protein smoothie and put your Immunocal in there, there might be competition for absorption sites in the gut. I mean, that can happen. But like when we do our studies, Alberto, some of our studies, we looked at really sick people. And so we would be using like 3 pouches a day, occasionally more. And we gave it all at once. Now, it would have been nice to break it up during the day, but you got to remember how busy a hospital is and how busy the nursing staff is. They'll be damned if they're going to mix up the Immunocal 3 times a day or even twice a day. So these patients were receiving 30 grams at a time. And you see the results of the trials. They did well. Could they have done a little bit better had we broken up the doses? Maybe, I don't know. If you have the time and the patience, fine. Myself, I like to spend more time working and less time eating. So when I'm in a state, if I'm not feeling well and I want to take 3 pouches, I'll take them all at once. But that's because I'm lazy.
Yeah. All right, doctor. Well, thank you so much for taking all this time to answer all these questions and to explain about the history. So I'm just gonna stop the recording so that and open the microphone so that people can say goodbye to